Thank you all for coming this evening. It's nice to have you here. Just a little bit about myself and how I got started in this field. My name is Kim Lakin-Kreger. The Lakin is my maiden name, and I just started using that again about a year ago when I kind of started to get into this business. And there's another story to that, but it's kind of odd to say my maiden name. I haven't said that for 30 years. But so I've been married for about almost 26 years, and we have 3 kiddos. There they are. When they're little, our oldest is now 29, and she has our grandbaby, and then we have a 21-year-old, and the baby right here is my baby. He's 18 now. So and then the other picture was actually that's almost 2 Christmases ago, but that's our family now. We've got a 4-year-old granddaughter, Sophia, and she's the best. I've been blessed to be able to stay home with her most of her time too. She just started in preschool last year, and about that time is when I went, oh gosh, I can't go everywhere that she is like I did with my kids. I was one of those hovering parents that was everywhere that they were, just so that I could keep an eye on them and keep an eye on everybody else. So when I heard my granddaughter was going to preschool and I didn't have anything to do with it, I went, we've really got to step it up here. Because I feel like I said, I was a hovering parent. I don't know that I educated my kids so much. I was very honest and open with them. So I guess in that aspect, I educated them, but I didn't go into a lot of the specifics that I am doing now with my granddaughter, and just making sure that she knows that she has all the tools that she needs to be able to be safe as she's growing up. So that's my family. I've been in I've been like a children's advocate for over 25 years. I've worked in children's ministry and been the children's minister over at South Suburban for a few years, and then a lot of volunteer work over there as well. So we also, about 10 years ago, I volunteered and I was working over at Judy's House for Grieving Children. And I really just felt like, this is something that God's called me to do, but there's still that secret that I was keeping. And the secret was, about the sexual abuse that I had experienced. And so it was really rewarding, and I'm really glad that I went that avenue and I was able to facilitate grieving kids. But I really feel like God would use me in this way eventually. So it's nice to be able to kind of go out and start, using my experiences to help others, and hopefully what I teach can do that. Well, it does do that. Sorry, I'm good. Okay. So I take it you're all parents, right? Or grandparents? Do you have grandkids or just not yet? Okay. Okay. Good. And how old are the ages? So you've got a 7-year-old. Just okay, and that's your only one? And yours are 30. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. There's an organization starting. It's called Illuminate Colorado. And they are getting a grant, and they are going to start educating all of the preschools and daycare centers and everything throughout Colorado. So it's nannies and stuff like that. If they're going to get certified, then they will be offered this course as well. So it's a really good program for daycares and nannies and stuff to get into. So that's good. How old are your kids? Little ones. How fun. Neat. Well, so we all have a heart for kids, and even if we didn't have kids, what I'm going to talk about tonight, and the class that you can sign up for to take, is something that is for everybody. I believe that it is, our responsibility as adults to take on that responsibility and watch out for child sexual abuse. Um, so, what is the Stewards of Children? The Stewards of Children is an evidence-informed prevention solution class that increases the knowledge, improves attitudes, and changes child protective behaviors. It offers practical prevention training with a conversational, real-world world approach. What it says up there. So basically, we're going through real stories, of people who have been abused. They talk about their stories and then how they have been able to come through and heal and be able to help on the other side. So, and there are lots of different programs out there. And even in Colorado, there are several different programs that you can sign up for and take. A lot of them are a lot more expensive, but they all basically teach the same thing. But the Stewards of Children is the only program that has been approved by several different outlets. It's let's see, I lost my place here. It uses the real people and real stories. And it's undergone, that's what I wanted to say, is that it's undergone 3 quasi-experimental studies, whatever that means, and a 3-year study using full experiments on what works and what doesn't to get people to understand exactly, if you haven't been abused before, exactly how you can watch out for it and what you can do if you see it, and then how you can act responsible when you see it. They also did some other studies that produced data that suggests that the Stewards of Children program is effective in increasing the educator reporting, which also leads to positive outcomes for the kids as well. So here's what some of the adults have said. Well, wait a minute, I got ahead of myself a little bit. Why does it apply? So the Stewards of Children training uses real people and real stories. And then why does it apply to you? Because child sexual abuse is likely the most prevalent health problem that children face, with the most serious array of consequences. Did you guys know that 1 in 10 children will experience child sexual abuse before their 18th birthday? And that statistic has come down actually throughout the year since we've been getting some education out there a little bit. So, you just take a class of 10 kids, any age, and one of those children would have experienced it. And most likely you're not going to know. And that's the hard part about it all. I waited 40-some years before I started talking about my experience. Of course, I'd gone to therapists and things like that, but basically, it's something that we just don't ever want to talk about. I mean, it's embarrassing and it's a tough subject. And so, why does this apply to you? Because child sexual abuse is the most prevalent. There we go. Why would I want to make changes? Because the Stewards of Children has been exclusively evaluated and is the only evidence-informed child sexual abuse training program available nationally. Oh, this is one of what Art Sickler had said after he had taken the training when he was here the last time. I put a couple of these up here, one of Art Sickler, and then another gal, Terry Lightbody. She's a counselor over at the Arapahoe House. They're a house for, I think it's teenagers and teenage parents, and so they help teenage girls out. So, as I said, I feel that adults are responsible and they should be taking the brunt of safety for their kids. I remember when I was young that there were hotlines that you could call, and you'd see those flashed across the TV every once in a while, call this hotline if you're being abused. And I just thought, well, what good is that going to do? And it didn't really do a whole lot of good. People who called those lines, basically, you could get some help, just talk to at that time, but there wasn't any follow through with it. So, what we need to do is educate communities, like what we're doing now, is educate the whole community so that everybody can watch out for the kids. But we're still showing that the statistics are showing that adults aren't shouldering this responsibility. So why are we at such a loss when it comes to protecting their children? Well, statistics show that adults are just unaware of effective steps that they can take to protect their children from child sexual abuse. Most adults don't even know how to recognize the signs, and many don't know what to do if sexual abuse is discovered. So I'm going to show you just a short little clip and of the survivors that are on the training video as well, and just to show you a little bit about how it flows and their testimony and stuff and what this is about. So.
I grew up in the picture-perfect family. I was called the debutante Miss America. I was the first Miss America that they ever brought a family up on stage. My father continued to sexually violate children and teenagers until he died at age 75.
I still cannot even say what really happened, other than he had sexual acts with me and had me perform it, but I still can't say it. I mean, I don't know if I ever will.
And that's what I feel that was taken from me. My virginity, my youth. You're never the same after that.
What I've heard from people who abuse often is that all the signs were there, but no one bothered to ask them about it. No one in their family, no one in their work. And we need to learn how to see what's going on and begin to ask questions.
Whether you're a mandated reporter or not, it's your moral obligation to stand up for children.
We have to understand that doing the right thing is not doing the easy thing.
Law enforcement is never going to investigate their way out of these type of crimes, these crimes against children. It's only through prevention that we can help stem the tide.
If you spare one child, when people don't have a clue the ripples from one job. So you stop one source of ripples, and that is huge.
So that's the curriculum that I teach. It's called Stewards for Children. The lady that was first up on there, Marilyn Vandenberg, have you seen her before? She was Miss America, and she was like one of the first women public speakers, and she lives here in Colorado, and hopefully I'm going to meet up with her pretty soon. I sent her an email just to say, actually, if she could come to one of my classes, and she said, yeah, I'd love to. I'm not able to this week, but so it'll be neat to meet with her. I'd love to just pick her brain a little bit about how she has been doing this for so many years. So what can you guys do? Learn and practice the 5 steps foundation. And that consists of 1, making choices, because we all have the ability, both in our organizations and in our families, to make proactive choices that protect children and can keep them safe from sexual abuse. The second is taking risks. Sometimes we have to take risks to protect children, even if we're uncertain or don't know what the outcome is. And then just support each other. So as communities, organizations, and individuals, we can give support to each other's efforts to help prevent child sexual abuse. And we can ask for support when it's needed. I think a lot of times what they're showing is that people are afraid sometimes to say anything because they're not sure that they'll be supported by, whether it's their person that they're working with or if it's their spouse or whatever. So if you're all on the same board, then you'll know that you're going to get that support when something or if something comes up. So you want to learn the 5 steps to protecting your kids? Ready? So the first one is to learn the facts. And the first fact is it's that realities, not trust, should influence your decision when regarding kids. Experts estimate that 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused before their 18th birthday. That is outrageous. And it's got to stop. We've got to be able to change this. And we can if we all come together and do it. So about 35% of those victims are 11 years old or younger. My abuse started when I was 5, and with some neighborhood kids. I didn't know at the time that that was abuse, but as I got older, I figured out, that just was not appropriate. And then there were several other instances throughout the time I was, from about the time I was 5 till about I was 12, where neighborhood kids had been inappropriate with me. And, that puts in your mind a whole different relationship level of, when I go to get a boyfriend, what does he expect? Or, it was just, I never had a regular, friendship with a guy, because I always thought that that's what they wanted. And that was basically how I had been trained since the time I was little, is that, women are for sex. And that's not true. That shouldn't be. No little girl should feel like that. And when I met my husband, I actually met my husband when I was pregnant, just a week before I found out I was pregnant. And we dated all through my pregnancy. He was the first platonic male friendship that I ever had. And we've been together for 26 years since. So God is good. He has a plan, but it hasn't been easy all the time. And a lot of that is because of the way that my mind was brought up. Like I said, he doesn't think of me that way. He has a lot of respect for me, and it's not just about sex for him. So that has helped my healing tremendously too. So 9% of 10 to 17-year-olds will receive some kind of a sexual request while they're on the internet. That's really scary. The internet, it just blows me away. You have to, as parents, especially if you've got little kids, you've got to be aware of what they're doing and where they're going on the internet. Just like when they're going out, as teenagers, where are you going? What are you doing? Who are you going to be with? The same thing needs to be asked every time that they're on the internet, too. And as my kids were growing up, they didn't like it, but I had all of their passwords, and I would check on them periodically, and they knew that I did, because they would change their passwords on me. And I'd go to them and say, I need your password for that. Well, I didn't do anything, and they never were doing anything bad. I had 3 wonderful kids, but they knew that I was watching, and they knew that, nobody could have snuck in and on the internet and asked them for a sexual request, because I was aware of everything that was going on. But these days it really does scare me when you have little ones coming up. So 30% of children that are sexually abused are abused by a family member. And that's pretty, that's more common than not. The stranger danger that we've been teaching kids about just really doesn't apply these days. Stranger danger is about 10% of the abuse that happens. It would be a stranger. Everybody else is somebody that the family knew. So as much as 60% are abused by somebody that the family trusts, somebody who has been a friend of the family or who has come into the family and befriended them. And then nearly 40% are abused by older or larger children. And that's something that I really wanted to talk about for a minute, because I think that we don't realize, or a lot of times parents don't realize, and when you're younger and you're maybe putting a 10-year-old with a 15-year-old, the 15-year-old's going to watch the 10-year-old or whatever, just be aware that their mind is completely different. Their mind is in a different space. Their hormones are different and everything. So just be aware of, the one-on-one situations, or, talk to your kids and tell them specifically, do not allow anyone to touch you. It's not appropriate and nobody can touch you. And that way they know. I mean, nobody ever told me that. I didn't know. And so, you know, we've just got to be talking to our kids and letting them know, just being open with them. And 75% of child pornography victims are living at home when they're photographed, and the parents are often responsible. 78 to 80% of sexual abuse survivors report excessive drug and alcohol abuse, just to try and numb the thoughts that are going on in their mind. And I did go through some of that as well in my teenage years, before I got pregnant. Approximately 40% of sex offenders report sexual abuse as a child as well. So a lot of them are acting out on, you know, what they were taught. It doesn't make it right. So approximately 70% of sexual offenders of children have between 1 and 9 victims, and 20 to 25% will have 10 to 40 victims. That's a lot of kids. So, you know, even if you guys that are here tonight were not sexually abused, or if no one in your family was, child abuse is still impacting your life. Because the average cost, lifetime cost per victim of sexual abuse is $210,000. And those expenses are paid, you know, largely by us, by the taxpayers. The U.S. spends approximately $124 billion annually for the cost of child sex abuse. And these costs include healthcare, criminal, you know, child welfare, and add to the fact that child sexual abuse is also, it's moving on me, is the root cause of many other devastating and expensive social problems. 40% of pregnant teens reported that they had a history of child sexual abuse, and young girls who are sexually abused are 3 times more likely to develop psychiatric disorders or eating disorders. And male survivors of child sexual abuse are 70% more likely to have psychological treatments or suicidal thoughts or try and attempt suicide. And except for murder, child sexual abuse is the most expensive victim crime in the U.S. And who pays? We do. We're all paying for it. And, you know, people don't talk about that a whole lot. They're not talking about the cost of that. So the Steward of Children's program is only $20 to train an adult to improve a child's. And if the average trained adult trains 10 children, or protects 10 children from child sexual abuse in the years after the training, then that's thousands of children that are going to be protected. You know, if you think about it, I went and trained at a preschool, and there were 7 preschool teachers there. So if each one of those preschool teachers is looking out and watching for 10 kids, you know, it's going to make a big difference. It really is. So we've all got to, if we all just do our part, then we can make a big difference. So prevention's the answer. The second step is to minimize opportunities. So if you eliminate or reduce isolated or one-on-one situations between children and adults and older youth, then you'll drastically reduce the risk of sexual abuse. I tell this story quite a bit at my classes as well, that one of my abusers used to always come and find me when we were playing hide and seek. It was an innocent game of hide and seek, but that's something that I always just tried to steer my kids away from. And I always have somebody in my class that goes, "We love hide and seek," and I understand that, and that's okay. I mean, I'm not telling everybody not to play hide and seek. I'm just saying be aware, or also, you know, make your kids aware that nobody has the right to touch you, no matter what you're doing, wherever you're at. Just reducing those one-on-one cases. So more than 80% of sexual abuse cases occur in those isolated one-on-one situations. So reduce the risk in protecting children. If you understand that abusers are often will befriend your family, they'll become friends with you and, you know, hang out with you, do family activities, and earn your trust, and then gain alone time with children. I think there was one family who said, that they saw the whole thing happen. They saw this guy come into their life. They saw him, wanting to be a part of their family, wanting to do things with them. They thought he was just a really nice, lonely guy. And they let him be a part of their family, and they let him watch their kids, and he abused their kids. So, I'm not saying don't be nice to people, but just be aware. And also, if you're making it very clear that you're open and you're clear that you are not going to tolerate child sex abuse at all, or any kind of abuse, then you're going to kind of ward off those people. They're going to say, well, this person's watching for it, so they're probably not going to stick around. So just being very open and honest with everybody that's around will help as well. So think about, the one-on-one settings, and choose group situations when possible. Think carefully about the safety of situations in which younger kids are with older kids. Set an example. Be an example yourself of avoiding those one-on-one situations in isolated places with children that aren't your own. I have a goddaughter, and she's 13 years old, and she a lot of times will go to church with me, and I'll go pick her up and take her to church and then take her home. And it occurred to me one day, I was like, this is the perfect situation that wouldn't be safe if it wasn't, somebody that her mom knew was open and honest about everything that's going on. But, unfortunately, her mom is dating somebody who isn't very, I don't think is appropriate for her and her situation. My goddaughter has two younger twin sisters. They're 4 years old, and her mom is dating their dad again, and he has been in jail before for child sexual abuse. And her mom has decided to start dating him again. And so I've started having conversations with Bridget, and just really open, honest conversations with her. And I said, one point I just said, "Sweetie, has he ever made you uncomfortable?" And she said, "Well, his face makes me uncomfortable." I said, "Well, I can't do anything about that. But what she knows at this time is that I'm here. I'm open, I'm safe, and that if there is anything that she feels that she needs to talk about, she can come to me. And she doesn't have to keep a secret, if she ever feels uncomfortable." So, just being open and being there for the kids is huge. Monitoring their internet use, of course. Offenders use the internet a lot to lure children, and my goddaughter is on the internet quite a bit without her mom's supervision. They don't even have a computer, they just have her mom's phone. And so whenever she gets her mom's phone, I see her on Facebook, and I kind of keep an eye on her on Facebook because I know that her mom's not. And just recently, I got a friend request from one of her friends, and I accept them all just to kind of keep an eye on her. And within a half an hour, a double X-rated thing popped up, and I just went. I was on the phone to her mom saying, you really just need to be more aware about who Bridget is hanging out with online. This is not acceptable. Obviously, this person, that was her friend had, I'm sure had sent that same message to her. So just be careful. I mean, even images like that are abuse. So talk with program administrators, whether you're at the church or you're at school or wherever your kids are. Talk to the administrators about the supervision of older youth with the the care of the younger children. Talk and ask about screenings that include the criminal background checks and interviews and professional recommendations. Avoid those programs that don't use these methods. I think when I was younger, even though I had a lot of this knowledge in my head, I wasn't sharing it. Even going to a doctor. Like when my daughter had my granddaughter, and she took her to the doctor, and the first doctor that I went to, she was like, I don't like this doctor and I'm going to try someone else. I'm going to keep going. And I thought, yeah, that's what you should do. I never realized that. I just took him to the doctor. You know, I don't really like you, but you're going to give him the well check and you're going to be okay. Stand up. You know, you have a right to stand up for your kids. Ask questions. Ask the hard questions, even if you have to. And, you know, talk about youth serving organizations training their staff and volunteers to prevent child sexual abuse. Like Denver Church of Christ. I would love to send my kids here anytime. So, and, you know, ensure that your youth serving organizations have policies in place and how they're going to deal with suspicious situations and how you'll report it. Also drop in unexpectedly if your kids are at daycare or at school or whatever. Drop in and see what they're doing. You have that right, even if it's a family member. Make outings observable, so you know, if not by you, but by everybody. Ask adults about the specifics of planned activities when your child leaves with them, and notice how they're able to tell you about what's going on or what they did or whatever. And talk with the child also following the activity, and pay attention to how that child's mood is, or whether he or she can tell you with confidence how that time was spent. And find a way to tell adults who care for children that you and your child are educated about child sexual abuse. Just be that direct. You have that right. Okay, and then step 3 that we go through is to talk about it. Just be open with your kids. Children also, often keep that abuse a secret, but you can break down those barriers and by talking about it and just being open with them about their bodies and sex and boundaries. I actually shared, when I was younger, I shared twice. I shared when I was about 13 with an aunt that I was being abused. And then when I was 15, I told my mom that my stepdad had abused me. And what I got out of that at that time was my mom's story of how she was abused as a child. And so it was more of a, this is just the way it is. And that was the, it just kept going on in the family, and it needed to stop. Somebody has to stop it. You can't just continue to let it go on. And when it's a secret, then it'll continue to go on. Now, my mom passed away almost 11 years ago, suddenly. And so I never got really this opportunity to talk to her a whole lot about that. She had just been saved. She had just been baptized and had just gone on her first women's retreat with her church when she passed away. And when she had called me when she'd gotten back, it was, I think, just the week after she had gone on the retreat that she passed away, but she called me when she got back and she's like, "Kim, we've got to go on a women's retreat together. I can't wait." And I was so excited because I had spent, my whole life praying for my parents to be saved, and here it was happening, and she was so excited, and she was a completely different person. And I really felt like I was going to have an opportunity, to kind of walk the Christian walk with her. And but God had other plans, and she passed away. She had epilepsy all her life, and she was working in her church, as a matter of fact. Had just taken a job at her church, and felt the seizure coming on, and so had gone and hidden in a room. And I don't know if she would have been okay, maybe if she wouldn't have gone to hide, but that's what she did. And we'd always talked about that too, don't hide, even though it was a scary thing for other people. But after that, after my mom passed away, was when God really started working on me and forgiveness. And he really helped me get to the point to be able to lead my father to the Lord as well. And about 4 years ago, he was baptized. And there are still, so he is a part of our family, he's still a part of our life, but there are boundaries, and he knows everything that I'm doing. I talk about my work all the time, and he sees things that I post online, and once in a while he'll call me and say, how's it going? How was your class tonight? And so it's a really weird feeling to have that open communication with him now. But I know that, it's just by the grace of God. I know it is that I'm able to do that. And then to be able to get up here and talk and help other adults be able to help prevent this. So understand why children are always afraid to tell. A lot of times the abuser will shame the child or point out that, that maybe the child let it happen, or tells the child that his or her parents will be angry. Those are pretty common tactics that they'll use. And oftentimes they're manipulative, and they'll try to confuse the child about what is right and wrong. And if they don't know, if the child hasn't been told right from wrong, then they don't know. So, and a lot of times they'll tell them it's a game. So, and then sometimes they'll threaten to harm the child or the family member. So that's why a lot of times kids just don't tell. There's a lot to it. If it's a family member or a dad, they're the ones that are providing for the family. And so a lot of times kids are afraid that, if I tell, then the dad will have to leave the house, and then there won't be anybody to take care of us. So, there's a lot of things that goes on in kids' mind that you don't think is going on, but they're pretty smart. Some kids just don't initially disclose because they're ashamed to tell what happened, or they're afraid of disappointing their family. And some kids are just too young to understand. I had mentioned some, neighborhood kids were the ones that abused me when I was little. I had a friend who I'd go over to her house. It was her older cousin's house, that they were abusive with me and her. And there was one time that I left. I was in their basement there was like 5 of us. One of the boys had kind of cornered me in a back room and was inappropriate, and so I tried to run away. And as I was running away, I saw my friend being abused. And at 5 years old, I knew I didn't like what was going on, and so I was trying to get out of there. But it went through my mind that she must be really mature to be sitting there and taking that. And as I got older, it really bothered me, because I realized that it was abuse. And then just a couple years ago, she called me, and we connected again, and we started talking. And she actually does a talk show, a radio talk show, and I was on her radio talk show. We've done a couple specials with professionals and talking about child sex abuse prevention. So that's really how I kind of got started into this field. A lot of times, like I said, the children will love the abuser, and they just don't want to get anyone in trouble. So that's really hard. It's a really hard situation to be in when you love somebody like that, but you know that they're doing something wrong to you. It's so important to know how children communicate. A lot of times they'll tell portions, like they'll come to you and they'll say just a little bit of what happened, and just kind of look at you and see if they can gauge what your reaction is going to be, or if you're going to believe them or not. And oftentimes they'll just shut down and refuse to tell you more. If they feel any tension in your body or your face or anything, that you're not just being open and listening to what they're having to say, then they'll just completely shut down. Or a lot of times they'll change their story too and say that it didn't happen, even though it really did. Just talking with your kids from the time that they're little. I have several books that I read to my granddaughter now. They sit on her bookshelf, and she can go get them, and I read them to her whenever she wants. Whenever she feels like she needs to be empowered, then she will go and get the books. And at first I was a little nervous about it. I was like, what's she gonna ask? But she doesn't really ask a whole lot of questions. At this time, she's 4 years old, so at this time in her life, I think she's just kind of taking it all in. There's one little book that we read. It's called No Means No, and there's a little girl on the front with piggy tails and a little kitty, and kind of looks like her, and so that's her favorite one. And it just talks about how if Aunt Sally comes over and I just don't feel like hugging today, then it's okay for me to say no. I don't have to be rude, and I don't have to be mean about it, but it's okay if I don't want to hug that day. And, that's something that I, too, I'm saying being a lot more aware of with my granddaughter, because I don't feel like I was like that with my kids. A lot of times I remember going, oh, go give them a hug, go give them a kiss, and sometimes they're just not in the mood. It doesn't mean they don't like you or you did anything bad, they just don't want to. So that's okay. And it also teaches them, if you give them that power to say, no, I don't want to hug today, then that gives them the power to say it later on if something, really is wrong and going bad. So another thing is just talk to other adults about sexual abuse, because you're going to raise the consciousness of the community and all of the influences around you by just talking about it. You may want to offer support and information to adults whose children are experiencing abuse, and you may know and may not know what to do. So you also will put potential abusers on notice that you're paying attention. Like I said, just being open and honest and not trying to hide anything. Recognize the signs is step number 4. But don't expect obvious signs. It's really hard to tell a lot of times when a child is being sexually abused. Sometimes they're often there, but a lot of times parents just don't know what to look for. So physical signs of sexual abuse they're not real common, but if it's pretty bad abuse, then you're going to see redness and rashes and swelling maybe around the genital area, or urinary tract infections, or other physical symptoms. A lot of maybe anxiety or stomach pains that just don't make sense, or headaches that may occur just out of the blue. So just pay attention to those little things that your kids are saying to you, because it could mean something. Emotional or behavioral signals are more common. A lot of times being just too perfect to withdraw, or depression, or unexplained anger or rebellion. A lot of times, those kids that are at school that are just, raising havoc all over the place, or ADD or whatever, a lot of times they're just not able to say what is wrong with them. And so that's how they're able to get it out, is just by acting out. Be aware that in some children there are no signs whatsoever. If you find physical signs, though, or even just suspect child abuse, have the child physically examined by a professional. And you don't have to know for a fact. If you make a report that you feel a child is being abused, then they will check it out. And if it turns out that nothing is happening, that the child is fine after social services checks it out, they're not going to come back to you and say, you shouldn't have done that. I think if we start, this is what I feel, is that if we all just start, saying something when we really do have that gut feeling, then a lot more kids are going to be saved. A lot of times we'll feel something or see something and we'll go, that doesn't look right, but, that guy is an attorney and, he's real influential in the community, and so we don't want to cause any trouble. But, really, if something was going on, you're causing that child more pain than you ever would that adult. The adult should know better anyway. So step number 5 that you'll learn is react responsibly. So disclose, discover, and suspicions of sexual abuse provide opportunities to intervene on a child's behalf. So disclosure of sexual abuse means that a child has chosen you to be the person that he trusts to tell. It's the moment when that child learns whether they can be trusted, or whether you can be trusted to stand up for them or not. And don't overreact. Like I said, I think, kids know. They know how your facial expressions are and everything, so they'll know if you're getting really upset. So the best way is just like anything else. If a kid breaks an arm, you know what to do, or if they run a fever, you know what to do. So if we just take these, these 5 steps and practice them constantly, then it'll be just as, easy to do as when somebody gets a fever. Go give them a cool blanket, or you give them some Tylenol or something like that. Just be aware ahead of time, and then you'll know what to do. And then you won't feel so flustered if something does ever happen. And, because the most important thing is that you stay calm. And then offer support. Think through your responses before you react. And, make sure that the child knows that you believe them and that you're going to do whatever it takes, or you'll do whatever you can to get them the help that they need. Thank the child for telling you, and praise the child for their courage too. And encourage the child to talk, but don't ask a lot of leading questions, because asking about those details can kind of alter their memories sometimes. So, just a lot of times silence, just sit there and listen to them. And a lot of times, you may go 10 minutes of just silence, but you'll probably get a lot more if you can be silent out of them than trying to coax them to say something to you. And then, of course, seek professional help by someone who's trained. And I did hand out those sheets that have got resources on there, so you're welcome. I've filled all of those numbers in there, so you're welcome to use those, carried around with you anytime. Assure the child that it is your responsibility to protect them, and that you'll do whatever you can to take care of them. Report or take action in all cases of suspected abuse, both inside and outside the immediate family. And that's a hard one. I share also that I knew that my husband was a good guy. I married him. He's a good guy. And I knew that he was a lot different than the family that I had grown up in. Very responsible, and doesn't do drugs or anything. And but for the first year that we were married, and because we came into the marriage, I had a 3-year-old, and we didn't live together before we got married. And so when we got married, what I didn't know is that he's a real light sleeper, and so he would get up and wander at night. And so I would be up checking on him all night. And I, probably didn't even tell him this story until about 10 years ago. But, and it's sad to think that I was wondering, but the reality of it is that that's what I was told. I was told it happens. That's the way it is. And so going into a relationship thinking, it's just going to happen, but no, I'm not going to let it happen. And that was my thing. I was like, this is not going to happen. It's not normal. And so I was, up checking on him all the time too. And like I said, he would never, ever do anything. But, unfortunately, if you don't know, you need to have that conversation with your spouse as well. For the immediate family part. So discovery of sexual abuse means that you've witnessed a sexually abusive act or by an adult or youth with the child, or by some other means that abuse has taken place, and report that immediately. And suspicion of sexual abuse means that you've seen in a child or witnessed boundary violations by adults or other youth towards that child. So what we teach in the Stewards of Children is to stand up for that child, to set the limits, ask the questions. So you'll describe the behavior. For instance, it's against policy for you to be in the classroom alone with the student, and then say, you can go ahead and take that conversation to the lounge now, and I'm going that way, so I'll go ahead and walk with you. And that way, you are diffusing that situation. Nothing may have happened. It may have been innocent, but it wasn't an appropriate situation because that teacher was in the classroom with a child. So you're diffusing that situation by just saying, okay, let's go. This just isn't right, so we're going to go and we're going to make it right. Offenders are rarely caught in the act of abusing a child, but they're often seen breaking rules and pressing boundaries. So, for instance, tickling a child and the child is screaming, no, I don't want to do this anymore. It looks like Sally's done with that game now. Can we move on? I think that maybe she'd like to go find the other kids or something like that. So just being, aware of what's going on, and then not being afraid to say something. It may be innocent, but, if it's not, that child is going to know that you're standing up for them. So even if it's innocent at that time, right that second, at another instance maybe when it isn't so innocent, then that child will know that you've got their back. You're going to stand up for them. Know the policies for reporting disclosures, discoveries, and suspicions in your organizations. I don't do any of you work with children. Don't have to do you. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Neat. Yeah. So I'm sure that you have probably a pretty well described list of things that you're supposed to do. Yeah. And, all 50 states require that professionals who work with children report reasonable suspicion. Like I said, it just has to be suspicion. You don't have to know for sure. And, some states require that you support anyone with suspicion. Okay, so what can you guys do next? So as parents, you guys can make a safety plan that includes rules, a special family word or signal, and a list of people your child can tell if something happens to them. So speak openly and calmly, and utilize teaching moments and practice what-if scenarios in age-appropriate situations. Don't scare them, but have honest discussions about safety, just like you would, crossing the street. And then all of us adults can look for the signs. Of course, bruises and stuff and outward signs should be investigated, but a lot of times, it's the withdrawal or the agitation or, the change in their appetite or something that can really signal a problem too, so be aware of that. Be in tune with the problems and understand the sensitivity of the subject and the damage it causes. I think that because it's been around for so long, sexual abuse has been around forever, but we've never really had a movement that comes out and says, okay, we are going to stop this, we are going to make this a priority. And with the Illuminate Colorado that's starting, I'm really excited about it. They've got 4 different programs that they're doing that all have to do with protecting kids in Colorado. So you'll hear a little bit more about that too as we get started here. They're just now getting it started. So if you guys want, go ahead and sign up for a class and take the Stewards of Children class. I've given you each a postcard there with all the dates that I have coming up in the next month. Also, I just added a Saturday, so if in November, so if you're interested in coming on a Saturday, then just let me know and we can talk about that. But do you guys have any questions or anything about any of it? I have a list that I could send you. Do you want to maybe give me your email and I'll, yeah. I have this. Why don't you go ahead, even if you don't want to sign up for a class, maybe just put it on there and I'll just don't write down the class. And I'll send you a list of stuff that I got. I think, do you all know Dawn Ferry? Do you all know Dawn? Yeah. I think she was talking about putting like a list together, I think on the church website or something like that. So hopefully maybe she'll get that together pretty soon too. Just a list of some things that would be helpful for you guys all to have. So, yeah. Is there any other questions or anything? Well, thank you all for coming tonight. I know that it's not a fun subject to come talk about, but I appreciate that you guys are being open and proactive and that you're here. So thank you for being here. Yeah, thank you.